Hi, and welcome. My name's Tristan Brockbank, and I'm currently an undergraduate student at Utah State University. Right now at Utah State, I'm taking an Economics 1500 course from a cool cowboy professor named Randy Simmons. In any economics class, but especially in Econ 1500, because it's an intro class, there are a variety of new econ terms that get introduced to students throughout the material. To help his classes better understand the frequently used economic systems and the sometimes confusing concepts, Randy has students like myself make short videos explaining a few of the ideas we work with in class, hopefully making some of these introductory phrases a little less scary for someone who isn't totally familiar with the world of economics. In the first half of this video, I'm going to be talking about economic trade-offs, and in the second half, I will focus on supply and demand, and more specifically, how a fluctuation in price, either an increase or a decrease to how much something costs, affects the way that that item's supply and demand will look and act on a graph. First, trade-offs. An economic trade-off refers to a sacrifice made by a person in order to gain a good or service that they want. Everyone on Earth makes trade-offs every single day in order to get things that they need. Let me give you an example. Let's say you go to the store with a hankering for candy and you want to buy a Reese's peanut butter cup, but you see a Kit Kat bar that also sounds delicious. You only have enough money to buy one of the candies, so you have to make a choice between the two. You end up sacrificing your possible experience to eat the Reese's and buy the Kit Kat bar. Your decision to buy the Kit Kat bar instead of having the Reese's, or instead of not buying any candy at all, is a simple example of an everyday economic trade-off. Now let's talk about supply and demand, and how any given market's supply and demand variables will function when they're displayed on a graph. Any given market's supply and demand are depicted on a graph that has the price of one individual unit of the market good on the y-axis and the quantity on the x-axis. Now I know throughout this video I've been saying supply and demand, but I actually think it's easier to understand the market's demand before tackling its supply. This blue line on the graph represents the Kit Kat market's demand. This continuous line is called the demand curve. Demand and demand curves calculate consumers' demand or willingness to pay for a good or service at different given price points. A market's demand curve will always slope down and to the right because as the price of a good increases, the amount purchased by consumers will decrease. Let's look at Kit Kats. Let's say right now a Kit Kat bar costs $1. That $1 price is great for our Kit Kat consumer because suppose me or his mom or his employer or however he gets his money gives him enough that he can afford to spend $1 on candy per day. He can afford one Kit Kat per day. But then suppose for some reason the price of a Kit Kat bar increases to $2. Then, our same Kit Kat consumer, who had $1 per day to spend on candy, can only afford half a Kit Kat bar. This would lead most consumers to buy an alternate good, such as the Reese's. This decreases the quantity demanded in the Kit Kat market. Henceforth, an increase in the product's price results in customers buying less of that product. But let's suppose on the other hand the price of a Kit Kat bar drops to only 50 cents. Now our Kit Kat consumer, with his $1 to spend on candy, can afford 2 Kit Kat bars. This increases the quantity that the Kit Kat market demands. On the graph, a decrease in the price results in consumers buying more of that product. It's the relationship between price and quantity that causes a market's demand curve to always slope down and to the right. Now that we understand how demand works, let's talk about how markets supply that demand. A market supply is represented by the upward sloping red line called the supply curve. Supply curves will always slope up and to the right due to the same variable relationship between price and quantity that shifts the market's demand curve. Let me show you how this works in terms of supply. To understand supply, you have to think as if you are the producers or the suppliers of the good at hand. In our example, the people who make and sell Kit Kat bars. Let's say again our original price of one Kit Kat bar is $1. That's good and fine. Kit Kat is producing however many Kit Kat bars they need to fill their customers' demand at the $1 price point. But if the Kit Kat price were to rise to $2 per candy, then the Kit Kat producers are going to be making more money for every Kit Kat they sell, With that higher $2 price point and their increased profits per candy, the people who are making Kit Kats will be motivated and inclined to produce and supply the market with more Kit Kats in order to try and maximize their return profits at the new higher price, increasing the number of Kit Kats supplied to the market. This works on the contrary too. If the price of a Kit Kat bar decreases to only 50 cents, this is great for consumers who enjoy Kit Kats, but what this reduced price means for the Kit Kat producers is that they will only be making half as much as they used to for every candy they produce and sell. So, this lower rate of return profit motivates the Kit Kat company to decrease the amount of Kit Kat bars they supplied to the market, again trying to maximize their profits for every candy they produce. You see now why a market's supply curve is shaped the way it is on a graph. Supply curves will always slope up and to the right because with an increase to the price consumers are willing to pay for an item comes an increase to the number of that item suppliers will make available to the market for purchase. In other words, increasing the quantity supplied. And with a decrease in an item's market price comes a similar decrease in the amount of that item produced and sold, or a decrease in quantity supplied. To wrap up, supply and demand curves are both important and useful tools in understanding the world of economics, but it's also crucial to understand how the working relationship between a market's price and its quantity dictate how the market's supply and demand will function. Thank you all so much for watching my short video on a few of the basic economic concepts I've learned this semester. I hope you all enjoyed. Once again, my name's Tristan Brockbank. I appreciate your time.